What's up, people? I'm Shaggy, the opinionated hippie, and today we're going full hippie and doing a Phish favorite album ranking video thingy. Yeah, just gonna rank the 16 studio albums that are officially sort of their studio albums. I'm including the one they recently released under another name because that is Phish. Not doing the White Album, not doing the headphone jam thing or anything weird like that. Just the studio albums. That have been officially released. How did we get here from Frank? Phish covers Peaches, possibly other things. Recently, I haven't been as following them as I once did back in the day, but I know they cover Peaches and Regalia. What is my relationship with Phish? I was a hardcore Phish head back in the 90s. Once the Dead shows became a little more inconsistent in like the early 90s. I saw Phish at Berkeley Square, an awesome tiny little club back in 91. And it was a show that was great, but was just one of many great shows I saw in the Bay Area. Then Picture of Nectar came out in early 92. They played the Warfield in San Francisco a couple months later. And then that was the show that set me down the rabbit hole of Phish. By 93, I was driving to like Sacramento and Santa Cruz and all over the place to see them. Did summer tours in 94, 95, 98, 99. No, not 98, 99, 97, 98. Did not do 96. I don't know if there was a summer tour in 96. If you bought a grilled cheese or a soda on any of those tours, chances are you might have bought it from me. If you bought a Fresca in summer of 94, probably got that from me. There's a big story behind that. But yeah, saw some absolutely amazing shows in those days. Bomb Factory show in Dallas, the Run OJ Run show in Milwaukee, the Fire Alarm show in Cincinnati, 3 Gamehenges, 93 Sacramento, Great Woods, 94. I saw the Gamehenge Hoist in West Virginia. Yeah, some fantastic stuff I was privileged to see. Plus, and the reason I'm doing this now is they recently released a live collection of The Gorge in 98, amazing venue in Eastern Washington that overlooks, I think, the Columbia River Gorge. I was at those shows. So when they released that, I went and revisited those and I thought, hey, let's knock out this Phish video now. So yeah, kind of checked out after Undermined in the early 2000s. And that's when I started hardcore getting into metal. And so I kind of like got away from Phish for a while, but I have always tried to stay in touch with their recent albums, and at least check them out, and listen to them a couple times. But anyways, that's it. I think there might be a couple hot takes on here, but yeah, whatever. That's my opinions. These are my rankings. I will say that I don't think any of these albums are bad. And even the ones I have at the bottom, if someone were to say, hey, that's my favorite Phish album, I'm like, yeah, I can see why. Like, I understand. Like, over the years, I think they've become a little more mainstream, and I don't say that in a negative way. And I don't mean this in a negative way either, but some of the stuff on their like recent albums and maybe the past decade kind of remind me of Huey Lewis and the News, a much better, more sophisticated version of what Huey Lewis was doing in the 80s, but like really well polished, well put together, melodically hooky, pop rock songs that maybe have some horns and a little bit of R&B swagger in there. Always an interesting guitar solo in the case of Phish, much more interesting than in the case of Huey Lewis. There is a place in the world for bands like Huey Lewis and the News, despite whatever. And I think Phish is sort of a more sophisticated jam band version of that on some of their more recent albums. And I think the things that work best on their more recent albums are those more melodic pop avenues. And I think the proggy stuff has gotten at times a little lost or a little just not as inspired. But yeah, that's it. Anyways, I'm going to break this up into 2 parts because I probably have way too much to say about this band. So this will be 16 through 11, and then I'll make a second video for the top 10. But anyways, let's get on to number 16, Phish. Oh, who are Phish? 4 guys from Vermont, amazing musicians, guitar player, piano, bass player, drummers. They're all sick. All kinds of they're the ultimate jam band. I have 3 jam bands I like, the Grateful Dead, Phish, and Mo. I think the Grateful Dead are all around the best package. The jams, the songs are by far the best. Mo, I think, has better songs than Phish. Phish is by far, at least technically for sure, the best jam band of them. I could listen like some of my favorite shows are like Phish shows that have like a 45-minute tweezer or like a 67-minute tweezer. You know, I like those long, epic, meandering jams where they're just exploring ideas. They do that better than anybody. Comparing the Dead and Phish are like apples and oranges. I think the Dead are maybe a little better because their songs resonate more with me than Phish's songs. But Phish's jamming abilities are unparalleled in the jam band world. And to me, what any other jam band does, I relate back to Phish, because usually Phish will do that, but then also do a whole bunch of other things. So I think as far as the improvisation skills, they are the peak of the jam band world. I think that's a deserved title for them. I'm interested to know who you think are better jammers. If you're into jam bands, I only know really three, to be honest. I know some Widespread Panic. You know, I've dabbled in others, but those are the three I hardcore know. If there's somebody else I should check out that you think Umphreys, I know Umphreys. If you think somebody else has the all-around jam package, let me know in the comments and I will definitely check them out. But anyways, let's jump into number 16. Number 16 is their 15th album, the last officially titled Phish studio album. There was one that was released more recently under a different band name that will be on this list somewhere. This is not a bad album. I think there's a lot of, I think its fault is there's a number of sort of just kind of mid-tempo average songs that maybe aren't that memorable when you're done listening. They're not really painful or bad when you're listening to them. There are some pretty good moments. Second song, Leaves, has some really nice guitar play throughout it. It's kind of an acoustic piano type ballad. But the guitar work and the melody that kind of weaves through the whole thing, I think kind of redeems what is otherwise maybe just a standard slower track. Everything's Right is one of two of the more epic songs on here, clocking in at over 12 minutes. I don't like the Everything's Right portion of the song, like the poppier, which is about 5 minutes. The last 7 minutes, the jam on this, like it's a very dead sort of thing where the song kind of ends and the band just kind of melts into this jam. Page leads on piano for a while, and then we get some really like nice funky Trey guitar. Then I think the last couple minutes are just kind of fade out, jammy, weird, spacey stuff. It's a really, really good album jam. That is needed, because I don't think the first two songs hit that hard but aren't bad, and this kind of like the jam is really good on this. Then we get another couple songs that are maybe not bad but not memorable, don't linger afterwards. Got a song called Steam, which kind of reminds me of like maybe a second cousin to Peter Gabriel's Steam, just a slightly lower simmering type funk. That's a pretty good little long number. And then the closing number, Thread, is the other sort of epic number on here. Proggy number, clocking in at over 11 minutes. There are really nice pieces of music throughout it, but I don't think the entire 11 minutes holds up as one like really powerful, like you needed the momentum of every part, and it like it builds up and satisfies you at the end. There's some great stuff in it, especially Page's work. Page has some amazing kind of spacey keyboard work on here, but I don't think the overall effect is that impactful. So yeah, not a bad album. I think the energy is pretty good. I just think some of the songwriting is just a little too middle of the road and not that catchy or not that memorable. But a couple good moments. The jam and Everything's Right, Steam especially. But yeah, that would be my number 16, Sigma Oasis. Number 15 is Round Room. This came out in 2002. It's their 10th album. This one has a couple really good jammy numbers on it, a couple maybe shorter like rock type songs. But then there's a number of songs that just kind of don't do it for me. But it's got some really weird energy. I don't think it like hit. It's definitely not as like tightly wound and produced as something like a Farmhouse or even a Billy Breathes. It has this weird sort of just sprawling energy about it that I think part of that is the opening song, Pebbles and Marbles, which is like 11 and a half minutes, which is the best of the 3 long songs on here. Has a really nice jam in it, kind of an awesome jam in it, but it's a very weird, meandering, kind of doodly-doo type epic number that doesn't like hit really hard. It's very, I don't know, Pebbles and Marbles. It kind of feels like that. Like you're just like skating around on pebbles and marbles and trying to make something happen, but in like you're in nature doing it. I don't know. It's an interesting song, and I think it works. It just sets a very strange tone for this album. Like had it come in the middle of the album and you had like some tighter songs before and after it, I think it just gives it a different feel. But as the opening song, it sets a very amorphous tone, it's weird tone for this album. The next couple songs kind of don't do anything for me. Anything But Me. Round Room is a Mike Gordon song that's like way too clever, and I kind of don't like it. Mexican Cousin about tequila. It kind of works. Kind of a slow, drunken ballad about tequila, and the lyrics kind of work. Friday doesn't do much for me. Seven Below is a really nice sort of almost all instrumental slinky type guitar number that has some really good guitar energy, some really good instrumental energy. 46 Days, a Trey sort of 70s rocker, kind of reminds me of a little their rock version of like Little Feat's Fat Man in the Bathtub. Has some really good energy, like a nice 70s funky rock vibe. One of the other jammy numbers, Walls of the Cave, kind of has two separate parts, kind of a slower, more meandering first part, and then we kind of switch gears and get some much better guitar-driven energy in the second half. The parts don't necessarily work well together, but that second half is really strong. And then the album closes out with Waves, another long 11-minute number that has some interesting parts, kind of slowly builds. Kind of jazzy, but I just don't think it lingers. I don't think it's that memorable. I don't think it's overall that effective of an epic. I mean, we're talking that by this point, 2002, we have a good, 13 years of epic Phish songs to like compare these two. And this one just kind of doesn't hold up. A little bit better than, the Sigma Oasis, especially because I think that lead jam is good enough to like, okay, I'm going to give the rest of this a shot. 46 Days right in the middle, some good rock energy. But yeah, a solid album. But my number 15, Round Room. Number 14 is their 14th album. Came out in 2016, Big Boat. And even though this is only number 14, this album gets better every time I listen to it. And it's just maybe I want to put this higher, but then I look at the set list and there's a number of songs in the first half that just kind of don't do anything for me. But it's a really good album, and it's kind of got, I think there's three things going for it. It's got a lot of sort of Otis Redding, Blues Brothers, R&B, Memphis horns. I don't know who the horns are. I don't think it's the Memphis horns. But you got a horn section, and the horn section is just, you got a whole bunch of people on horns and sax. The horns just add to this. Like musically, this has a really nice R&B swagger for a lot of these songs. But then what ultimately happens for me is the vocal melody or the lyrics don't quite live up to what that musical instrumental swagger delivers. But it's got that going for it. The horns sound great. The arrangements are great. They're doing a great job with the horns. It's got three fantastic Page songs. Page gave 3 songs to this album. They're all fantastic. Third song, kind of a piano pop number called Home that has a ridiculous middle, just weird jam in it. Things People Do, which is like your back porch or like in the middle of the night with a like home stereo home recorder. Sounds like he's maybe playing like a pump organ or something. I'm sure I can figure out what that is. But a really neat little, just quirky little private, quiet little number. And then I Always Wanted It This Way, which is like the Pet Shop Boys. It's like him channeling 80s electronic Pet Shop Boys. Fantastic number. That works fantastically. And then this also has a number of Trey songs, which I think ultimately this is when the Huey Lewis comparison, a lot of songs that just kind of remind me of like that 80s pop, but they're a little bit better because the guitar playing is fantastic. Trey's always bringing the guitar solos, or the musicianship in general is just a little bit funkier just because the band is so talented. Don't really like the opening song, Friends. One of the reasons this might fall back a couple is because the opening track is not strong. It reminds me, not in a good way, well, in a good way, but the results aren't good. The comparison is not good. Of the Trachtenberg family players, They were in the mid 2000s, early 2000s. It was a family of musicians, and I think the dad might have played all the instruments, but live they all did them. And the basis of their whole band was they found a box of pictures, like a family album in a garage sale, and there was no information. So they went and they looked through these pictures and they wrote songs about the pictures, imagining the stories behind them. The songs are fantastic. But the delivery is more of like a weird talk singing type thing. And Friends reminds me of like the worst of their songs. It's just the vibe is kind of a Trachtenberg Family Players vibe, but I don't think the payoff is as good or the lyrics aren't as good. But yeah, other than that, I mean, we got some pretty average, some solid Trey songs. Opens with a not good Phish song. Mike Gordon has a song called Waking Up Dead, right smack dab in the middle of the album. That's kind of weird and just kind of gets weirder as it goes on. One of his better songs for sure. Miss You, Trey song, has some fantastic guitar work in it. The closing Petrichor is their kind of more epic number on here, over 13 minutes. Another one of those that kind of has a lot of different nice sections that work together really well. Nice little dramatic buildup in it that drops into a funky little groove towards the end. Again, it's one of those that while I'm listening to it, I enjoy it, but I don't think I don't think there's a lingering impact to like how great it is as a song. But yeah, this is a solid album. I mean, there's nothing bad on it. It's really good. Again, some good horns, great Page songs, some good energy. I like the production on it. But yeah, that would be my number 14, Big Boat. Number 13 is 1993's Rift. Yeah, this one might be a little contentious. I have just never ever really gotten into this album. I know it's pretty popular. I looked at a couple other rankings and it's usually kind of high up there. It's got two absolutely fantastic songs. In Maze, just is really, the rhythm on that is great. It's about somebody running through a maze and you're like watching them do it and the energy feels like they're running through a maze, and just the lines that they play and stuff like that. The music and the story match perfectly. And then the My Friend, which is this really nice acoustic intro, then drops into this dun dun, really funky song. I think those are by far the highlights of the album. Everything else, Fast Enough for You, second song, ballad, probably one of their better ballads. Maybe their second best ballad I think that Trey's ever done. But then there's a lot of songs on here that just kind of don't do it for me. My least favorite song of all time from Phish, Sparkle, is on here. Don't like that song. 4 minutes of just me not liking it. The Bomb Factory show, probably the best show I've ever seen from Phish. Second set was Loving Cup, Sparkle, 67-minute tweezer. I'm still bitter that Sparkle was a part of that, because had Sparkle not been a part of that, it would have been perfect. So I don't like Sparkle. It's a concept album, apparently about somebody sleeping and they're dreaming about their marriage, which is falling apart. Maze is very much about that. Like, that captures that I'm dreaming and this is all a metaphor, allegory for my relationship. And it's a good song that works well in this. Towards the end, you get like sound. You get two songs in the beginning and end where Fishman is like snoring, or he's singing about sleeping lengthwise when she's here and diagonal when she's not. So yeah, and then it ends with Silent in the Morning. So we end up with somebody apparently waking up in the morning. Excellent closing song. The vocal melodies are amazing on that. But it's just a little up and down for me. The opening riff is a little too much like Maze, though it is a good song. Horn is a neat little song, but I kind of don't like the wedge. Doesn't do much for me. Way, kind of a silly Mike Gordon song. All Things Reconsidered is like kind of like Okipa Ceremony, kind of a nice little instrumental ditty. And live, whenever they played Okipa Ceremony, they usually dropped into Susie Greenberg. So you'd get this little Susie, and then they drop in a little Susie, and you're off on this rocker. That's how I feel what should happen after All Things Reconsidered. It feels like we're about to go like, but then it goes into like this slow drum beat mound, and it just doesn't work, and it takes me out of it. Don't like it. I like the song, but I don't like the segueing. It's Ice, one of the few songs where I think if you took out the middle sort of proggy weirdness section and condensed it like into like a 4.5 minute pop song, I think it would be a better song. And then you got the lengthwise horse to close out with Silent in the Morning. So not a bad album. It's just there's a number of songs in here that just kind of irk me in some weird way or just don't do much for me. But I do understand why a lot of people really like this. It does. The concept album, the flow kind of works. I mean, there's a lot of strengths to this album. It's just personally not one of my favorite. Number 13, Rift. Number 12, another one that might cause some concern, The Story of the Ghost. I have tried so hard to like this more than I do. I love the concept of it. They went into the studio, they jammed on their sort of cow funk energy that they'd been jamming on in 97. They took those jams, they sort of crafted them into songs, and they released it as an album. It's definitely got a much chiller, different, groovier, low-key, funkier vibe than any other album they've ever done. But my problem is it doesn't have like a single central epic jam that really, like, live. This album opens with a song called Ghost. Nice little funky little song. You can tell it's coming out of a jam when it starts because it fades in. But live, they could drop this and turn it into like a, a 10, 15-minute beast with a really nice cow funk jam. And I think had they maybe opened the album with like a 12-minute Ghost or dropped it in the middle of the album, it gives everything a little more meat and doesn't feel like it really is 3.5 minutes of a 10-minute jam that we just turned into a song, but we left out the other parts, which is kind of a little bit what it feels like to me. Plus, there's a couple songs that don't fit and they ruin the vibe for me. One of them being Gaiute, which is like this 8.5-minute song. It's got all these written parts, doesn't really have a jam in it, has this really kind of epic, like epic part at it. That was originally came up in 94. They started playing it in 94. And it missed a couple albums that I think it would have worked better on. And then all of a sudden it appears on this album and it just doesn't fit. It just is not of the vibe. And it's the fourth song. And I think it opens up with Ghost, super funky. We get Birds of a Feather, which might have been better on like another album, but it kind of works. It's got a nice guitar solo in it. Really the only song on here that has sort of an extensive guitar solo. Then you get Meat, a really funky song. And then you get Gaiute, which just, I don't know. It doesn't fit in the flow of this album. Limb by Limb's another really good song that has some nice rhythms in it. Love Brian and Robert, one of the slower ballads on here. The MoMA Dance is kind of funky. But it's a little too... I like low-key chill albums. It's a little too of the same vibe low-key for me. And I think they needed something a little more epic to lift this album up. But yeah, I like what they're going for. I like the energy. I understand why I've seen it as people's favorites, or I know people who think this is the best album. I understand it. It's just not doing it for me. It's lacking something. But that's my number, 13? Number 12? That is my number, the number's right there. My number 12, The Story of the Ghost. Number 11 is Joy. This came out in 2009. And the title kind of fits the overall vibe of this album. There's a really good, uplifting, positive feeling about this album. Opens up with Backwards Down the Number Line, a sort of looking back and remembering your past type, really good energy, upbeat, fun song. Stealing Time from the Faulty Plan, nice kind of heavier rock energy right there. Some good guitar attack. The song Joy, a slower song, has some really good lyrics in it. Kind of about growing up in childhood and, the things you go through. Sugar Shack and Ocelot don't do much for me. Ocelot kind of bothers me. Kill Devil Falls is a really good like Bob Seger type 70s rocker. It's got some good rock energy in it. I like it. Light has some neat little energy in the beginning and then drops into kind of an upbeat, kind of funky little groove. I've Been Around, a Page song, is a nice like late night club piano, some guy on guitar, kind of, torch song type thing, not necessarily torch song, but like a late night blues club, jazz club type thing. Time Turns Elastic is like the long song on here. Another one of those where I think has really interesting parts, but maybe the overall effect isn't that like impactful. I think this is like, I think there was a whole album that Trey did called Time Turns Elastic that he might have released online or something, and this is like a condensed version of some of the ideas on there. Don't know about that. I may have to look into that. Don't know a lot about Trey's solo stuff, to be honest. And then 20 years later, the closing song is pretty good. Has a really nice Mike Gordon kind of bass jam at the end, sort of a la Starship Trooper from Yes. Not quite as epic as that, but a nice little finishing. But yeah, a really consistent album. Like nothing bad on here. Maybe one song I kind of don't like. Some really good energy. It feels good. It's positive. Starts off really strong with Backwards and Stealing. I think that's a good 1-2 punch opener. But yeah, I really enjoy this album. Another one that I think every time I listen to it, I feel like I like it a little more, and maybe it could inch into the top 10 if I ever revisit this. But for now, a solid 11. Well, that's it for 16 through 11. I'm trying to keep these videos as short as possible. Let me know what your 16 through 11 are if you want. Don't give away anything else. We'll keep all those as surprises. And let me know what you think about Story of the Ghost and Rift, because I'm interested in people's, and what people think about those two albums. I don't talk a lot of Phish these days, so I'm interested to see what the current sort of vibe on Phish is out there. But anyways, thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, share, and go listen to music, people. Go listen to some Phish. Go listen to Joy and just have a nice, joyful, awesome sort of pop rock, slightly proggy experience. Peace. Talk to you later.